How's it going? Can you believe it's already been a week since the NFL draft? Like, it's went as fast since it got over as it did leading up to it. How you doing, Thomas?
I'm doing great, man. It's been a long week so far, but I can't wait to chat it up with you about some of these rookies that we're going to be talking about.
Well, we're going to get right into it. We are going to first start with the biggest risers out of the rookies post NFL draft. And the first guy up is a running back that the Cincinnati Bengals drafted, Chase Brown. What are you excited about? Why is he a big winner after the NFL draft?
For me, it just comes down to possible opportunity. Like we never really know with all these sort of later, like round 3 running backs or later. I believe Chase Brown was picked at the back end of the 4th.
He was picked 28 of the 5th round.
Yeah, 5th round then. Okay,
Yep.
But still, it's like we've heard all this stuff about Joe Mixon. He has this sort of case against him, and he might be cut because they can save $9 million in cap space this season. All those things just put together, like maybe he might be there for this season, but he's probably gone by next season at least. Mixon is, and at that point, it could be anyone from this backfield. It could be Travion Williams. It could be Chris Evans. It could be Chase Brown. And in this draft, just like taking Chase Brown somewhere in the 2nd round for me is something that could pay off in a big way. But what do you think about Chase Brown?
I mean, I can't see them going into the season with a competing roster with Chase Brown as a big part of their running game. I don't know that they're going to release Mixon unless something gets real bad for him outside of football. He knows the system. He's a pro. He's been in this offense. You get that cohesiveness with him and the rest of the offense. And you're not going to be able to replace that since you didn't really replace it in the draft. I don't think with Chase Brown. I don't know that they're going to rely. I say this, and Kansas City relied on Pacheco last year, 7th round rookie. But they also didn't have Joe Mixon on the roster when they took him. It was CEH. CEH even got the shot at the beginning of the year. It didn't work out, and they ended up going to Pacheco after that. I don't see that situation in Cincinnati. If Mixon would get hurt and they had to use Chase Brown, then maybe. But I don't see them doing that. They're chasing a championship. They've got a better running back on the roster. That's my thought on Chase Brown. I wasn't real excited before. Got the landing spot people were wanting a running back to go to, but I just don't think that he's the guy that is going to push Mixon out if they can't find another option for that team. Any last thoughts there on Chase Brown?
I mean, the guy's definitely built like a featured back, that a guy who can play all 3 downs. He's not amazing in the passing game, but I do think, like, again, it's one of these things where it's also like me having him as one of the winners is also because of how the draft class is panning out, right? Because if it's in a deeper class, he's probably not going to be a winner. But in this one, I think like where you can get him, it's definitely worth taking one of those shots in like the late 2nd. In Superflex or mid-2nd in 1 QB, and then maybe maybe you just hit the upside, because we know running back is not necessarily all about talent. It's even more so about volume.
Yeah, I definitely don't disagree with that part of it. Maybe 3rd round for me on Chase Brown. My first one is Kendre Miller. Running back, Saints. We loved him before the draft. I think we're both going to be on board with this one. Ends up being the 4th running back off the board. If you don't love the Zach Charbonnet landing spot, then Miller's next up for me. I do think that Miller, Achane, who we will be talking about today, Roschon Johnson, and Spears are all right there in a group where I if you picked one of any of those four, I wouldn't be bothered by it. But I think they're all in that same group. I thought the talent was all similar, and I'm not moving them around a whole lot post draft. But the nice thing about Miller is you and I had him way ahead of consensus, and we kind of got the validation from the NFL that he belongs up there with those guys, right? Because a lot of people had him as like running back 8, 9 in this class, and I just think that he's in the running for that running back 3 position with some other guys, but that draft capital, that third round, pick 8 in the third round, Saints, we don't know what's going to happen with Kamara. Jamal Williams is there, but I think Kendre Miller is in a good spot, and kind of reminds me of the situation Kamara was in when he came in. Now, he's not Kamara like from a skill set standpoint, but there was the veteran running back there. I believe Adrian Peterson was there at the time too. So there was like the Ingram and Peterson, and then Kamara just showed that he was younger, had the burst, was a better asset. It drove Peterson out of town, and eventually he ended up taking a huge role in that offense. And the beautiful thing is that we could see kind of the Ingram Kamara thing while Kamara is still there with Miller and Kamara. You there? Did you freeze? I think he did. It's not me this time. I'd love to know in the chat if you guys love Kendre Miller as we wait for Thomas to get back here. Let me see here. I don't want to skip the next guy's his. I can go into Jonathan Mingo, who is my next guy on the list, and a player that I really, really liked. He was raising up my boards. If you've been in any of our mock drafts, leading up to the NFL draft, Mingo was the guy that I was taking in the 3rd, 4th round, every rookie draft. I mean, I think he moves up to late 1st, early 2nd consideration. Another guy, one of the bigger receivers in this draft. He wasn't one of the small guys. We've seen a lot of 5'10", receivers that I was worried about. This guy's got a little size. He gets to start off his career with Bryce Young and building that connection there in Carolina. And has a chance to be their wide receiver 1 right off the bat. I know they got Thielen. He's a little bit older, slowing down a little bit. Here we go. Thomas is coming back in.
There we go.
Hey,
sorry, man.
Broke
My
it.
net just decided to die on me.
You're the one that broke it this time. So I went ahead. I talked about Miller, and then I talked about Mingo some. So I know you didn't hear that part, but if you want to speak on, I don't know how much you heard on the Miller part, go ahead and speak on him. And then if you want to say anything about Mingo and what you think about him, go ahead right thereafter.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, Miller is a guy we were both in on before the draft, and like we talked about actually on like the day of the draft, like it just looked like the NFL really liked Miller, and as you said, we confirmed that at the draft. He was my RB4 before the draft, and now he's my RB3 just because of the landing spot for Charbonnet. And yeah, he's just one of those guys. Like he's a lot like Jamal Williams actually, who's already there, but he just has like better feet in the trenches, and he's just a bit more explosive. So like if he does well, he could even take like the second, like even when Kamara comes back, Miller might just be like the change of pace guy ahead of Jamal Williams at some point this season.
That's one of the points that I made was that they could have kind of the Ingram Kamara duo there with Miller and Kamara until Kamara's gone.
Yeah. As for Mingo, I mean, it was a pretty good landing spot, I think. You really loved him already, and I was sort of looking more and more into him, and he was rising on my board as well. So he is also definitely one of the winners for me. And I think it's really great when you get this sort of combination where a team decides to draft a quarterback and then a rookie wide receiver with them so that they can grow together. And especially with sort of Young's, like he's a small guy and he hasn't had any passes batted down in college, but defenders doesn't try as much to bat passes down as they do in the NFL. Like a lineman in the NFL, D lineman in the NFL is going to know, like, I'm not going to make it to the quarterback. I'm just going to throw my hands up there and then hope I can get a batted pass, right? Mingo with the size is someone like Bryce can actually see him, right? When all the D linemen just throws their hands up there. So I think it's a good fit, and he's definitely a winner for me as well.
While we're talking about him, Bryce in the chat said, "Are you guys higher on Mingo or Rashee Rice, who I do have on this list in a different category?" Mingo obviously having the better opportunity for volume, but Rice having the upside with Mahomes. Seeing these guys go pretty close to one another in Superflex, I do think they're going to be close. Go ahead and why don't you answer that first there, Thomas?
For me, it's going to be Mingo. We don't really know like what the target distribution is going to be like for the Panthers, so I think there's going to be more upside for Mingo. Whereas we've sort of seen this past season with Mahomes that he's just completely happy with throwing to whoever is going to be open, and there's a lot of sort of guys in the same range in Kansas City. Like they have your Sky Moore, your Tony, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, and now Rashee Rice. And they're obviously all behind Kelsey. Like Jonathan Mingo could be the number one target getter for the Panthers. And maybe the targets themselves are not as good as the targets you get from Mahomes. But I think there's an easier pathway for Mingo to be the wide receiver one for that offense.
The easiest way for me to put this is Mingo is my wide receiver 4, and I would draft him before Quentin Johnston. That's how much I like the Mingo talent before. This is a guy that I love because he's that like big slot type receiver that has running back talent after the catch. I like him more than Rashee Rice, but I'll save my Rashee Rice stuff until we get to him. And then let you talk about Devon, running back, Miami Dolphins. You're next up on the biggest rookie risers, and then we're going to be moving to the fallers.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously with Devon Achane, I obviously had some concerns with his size, and I still kind of do have that. But I think if there's one like scheme fit that he fits perfectly into, it's sort of your college or your Shanahan like one cut and run scheme where he could basically be like a Raheem Mostert for them. He's obviously not as big as Mostert, but he has that same next level speed where if he finds the hole, he can just be gone, which that offensive run scheme just does so well. It does so well, like opening that one gap and then you just shoot through it. And then he's behind Mostert and Wilson probably to start the season. But like those guys, they never play a full season. Like even between them, I don't remember like if they've ever played like 17 games between them. We've seen Jeff Wilson be out for like almost an entire season, and Mostert always misses games. So I think he's going to get an opportunity at some point this season, and then he's just going to take it. And he's going to be hyper efficient, I think, in that offense. So even if he doesn't get your 200 carries, he's just going to be efficient with them.
I don't disagree. The only thing I would say is that I think I want to wait to take shots on him and take some of the other running backs in the draft, and then maybe try to trade for him at the beginning of the season when he is the running back 3 on the roster, when, you know, Wilson and Mostert are healthy, and get him for a better price than what it's going to cost me in the rookie draft. And that may backfire. They may both be hurt by the time we get to the regular season.
It's true.
But as it sits right now, I do think he is going to be 3rd. I don't think they're going to move off of either of those guys before the season starts.
I don't think so.
They're familiar with the offense. The coach is familiar with them. And it's going to be, when all 3 are healthy, I probably don't want any of the 3 unless it's in a best ball format or something.
That's fair. I think it was for me, he's like sort of a fringe round one. Just outside round one for me, and in a draft, I got him yesterday at like 2-7, and I think that's where it was just too good for me to not pick him there. So if you can get him there, I think it's really great. But I think the whole point with all these running backs, and like you said, there's like a pretty big tier of running backs, like just at the fringe of the first round, start of the second round. And if people don't love them, they're gonna fall, and that's where it's really, really great to take chances on them.
Yeah, I definitely like him in the second round. I'm going to go with the bigger running backs in the first round, the Charbonnets, Millers, Spears, that group. I'm going to go ahead of him in the first round. But that top half of the second round is where I'm willing to take shots. And on him, but let's get to your first rookie faller. Tank Bigsby, running back, Jacksonville Jaguars. He was, and I'm going to look this up. You can start talking about him, and then I'll give you a point up. Wait, round 3, pick 25. He was the 7th running back off the board. What are your thoughts there on why he is a big faller, even though he went in the 3rd round?
I just think what the Jacksonville offense wants to do is throw the ball. Like, you have Trevor Lawrence, and this guy is just going to take another step this season, and you could sort of see them end up being almost like a KC kind of offense. I know Doug Peterson likes to run the ball, but I just don't know if there's going to be enough touches left for Bigsby when all is said and done, because they have weapons in the passing game now with Ridley joining them, and ETN is going to get work in the passing game. So Bigsby he's going to be like the short yardage guy, and obviously he's going to fall into the end zone every once in a while, but I just don't think there's going to be enough there that I really like him. And it was also because I really liked him pre-draft. Like, I had him as my RB5 pre-draft, and I just think there's not going to be, like, he's going to get scraps, I think, and that's why he's fallen quite far for me now.
I'm on a different side of this. I actually like Jacksonville for Tank. I've always been on the side that I don't know that ETN is an early down back, the guy that you want to have take 250, 300 attempts. I think Bigsby could be that guy in that offense with, 150-ish for ETN plus pass catching work, right? That doesn't mean ETN cannot be a good fantasy running back, but it's just in a different way. I don't know. I don't know how that's going to play out. I don't know. He got draft capital that people want to see. And, we kind of joked about this with some other running backs. People love the draft capital. 3rd round is good for a running back until there's another running back on the team. And then then all of a sudden it doesn't matter anymore. Right. Yeah. And, now they're not going to get the opportunity and everything. And it's not your grandpa's NFL. It's not one running back in a backfield anymore.
No.
And I think that ETN and Bigsby could be a good duo. But that being said, I still had the Millers, Charbonnet, Spears, even Sean Tucker at the time was up there, who we're going to talk about next. So he was already down on my running back list, but I don't think the landing spot is as bad for him as people think. If you think he's going to be a touchdown guy, then this is a good offense to be in, because they're going to have a lot of touchdown upside. But he may never be the starting running back. He just may be the flex running back. And that's still needed, right? So first up for my fallers was just Sean Tucker, and it's unfortunate because it was health. But he did land in a solid spot, I think. I mean, they have Rachaad White, but I think Tucker, if healthy, if the health goes away, is a guy to take shots on in the 5th round. We're going to talk about that later too, but unfortunately he fell completely out of the draft. People were like, what the hell's going on with Sean Tucker? Then we find out, I think his was heart. related.
I think so too. Which
If
is
I'm
why,
correct.
if you say his health goes away, does that mean he just flatlines?
I mean, it's not good, but it's not bad enough to keep him off the field, right?
No, probably not.
So he's gonna play and he's gonna have the opportunity to play. It's just riskier for the NFL team because if something does go bad, you're right, it is very, very, very bad. But it's not a skill. It wasn't the skill reason why he fell out of the draft, and he landed on an NFL team that doesn't have a good backup running back. I think he's worth taking shots on, even though he was probably the biggest loser out of all the skill position players. As we talked, he was talked about as the running back 3 in this class at one point. Some other guys had moved up and it had shifted a little bit leading up to the draft, but I mean, there were 13 running backs drafted, I think. And he was not one of them. So it's definitely a big fall for Sean Tucker. What are your thoughts on him?
I mean, I there's nothing really to be said other than what you've said. Like, you can't really agree more, because back in January when we did our first rookie rankings, he was my RB3. And then, like, you look at the tape and some other guys were sort of creeping up above him, and then in the end, you're like, he doesn't test at all at the combine. I can't remember if he even tested at his pro day. I don't believe he did. And then like this guy isn't testing, and then you find out there's the medical issue, right? And then obviously he falls out of the draft entirely and signed as a undrafted free agent with the Buccaneers. And as you said, like, we don't really know what the Buccaneers are. Like, we don't even know if they're a good team this season.
I think I actually have them either 31 or 32 on my list on my power rankings right now.
Yeah, which is it's wild. Like, Brady retires and you're like, you go from a top 10 power ranking team to possibly the worst.
Well,
like, we're like,
when you're going to
them or the Texans or Cardinals now. It's like, what the?
It might be hard for them to get that last spot because they're in such a bad division. But when it's Mayfield and Trask, it's rough, and they lost a lot of other players too.
Yeah, and they're getting old, right? Just generally, really, really old. But sorry.
Yeah, go ahead and finish on Tucker, and then go right.
Yeah, I just think Tucker is like like, we're gonna talk about him in a second too. I think because he's like one of those guys you take at the very end of your drafts now. But my next faller is Hendon Hooker, and obviously this is more for Superflex because you probably weren't taking him anywhere close to early in one QB. But like the hit rate on third round quarterbacks is just terrible in the NFL. And obviously, like, he may be talented enough to have been picked earlier, and the injuries would scare people away. I just, like, a third round quarterback just scares me so much. And I've seen people pick him at the very end of firsts in rookie drafts already, and at the beginning of the second, and I'm not probably touching him until the very end of the second round or early third round, just because the draft capital combined with the offense that he played in at Tennessee, it was like such a gimmicky offense, like nowhere close to an NFL offense. So for me, he's just fallen along while down my board, really. What's your thoughts on Hooker?
I'd rather take shots on him than Will Levis. I think
Detroit at cost, right? Or
do what?
Even in the same at cost, or even in the same range?
I mean, if I had to take him in the same range, if I was QB needy, I don't mind taking him in the top part of the second round. We have questions about a lot of these prospects, right? Like,
sure.
Outside of the top 3 for me, top 3 quarterbacks and then top 3 position players. So top 6 players in a super flex draft, I don't mind taking shots on him. Now, you're probably not going to have to. I think he's going to fall further in most drafts, but I would rather have him as a prospect, just a pure prospect, than Will Levis. Obviously, the rushing upside that comes with Hooker is good. He can throw a deep ball. there's going to be work that needs to be had, but I like the spot that he landed in.
Yeah.
You know, if Jared Goff has another year like he had last year, then we may see Jared Goff re-up in Detroit.
Mm.
If they're winning more games to make the playoff, make a little run. He's already shown that he's a good enough quarterback to make a run to the Super Bowl. He just hasn't showed that he can win the Super Bowl.
Mm.
And he had a great year last year. So who knows when Hendon Hooker gets on the field. But I do like the upside, and I do think that a big part of why he dropped to the third round was the injury. And this was a guy that was being talked about as potential top 10 or 11 for the Titans, right?
Yeah.
So there's skill there. And this year, just with the way the draft fell, it was unfortunate for him. But, I mean, gets to go to a team with a veteran quarterback. They're winning, which is just odd enough since it's Detroit. And moving in the right direction. So I do like to I will like to take some shots on him in drafts if the price is right. Next up is Josh Downs, wide receiver, Colts. Another guy that was talked about as the number 4 receiver in this draft. Literally leading right up to the draft. There's a lot of people that still had him at 4. We see him drop to the Colts in the 4th round, I believe. I'm pulling it up here. I forgot to pull this part up, but round 3, pick 60.
Third round.
Yeah. I forgot, man. But you know, this was a guy that at one point was talked about as a first rounder, and then we kind of expected him to go in the 2nd round. And I think the Colts got a good value on Downs, getting him in the 3rd round. I just don't know. I haven't been a big fan of most of the wide receivers in this class, so I'm probably still taking running back in his range. Yeah, did you expect Josh to drop that far? Because
I didn't.
It's not just the drop to the 3rd round. It's the fact that Jonathan Mingo, Jaden Reed, Rashee Rice, Marvin Mims, Tank Dell, Jalen Hyatt, Cedric Tillman all went ahead of him. With the guys that went in the 1st round that we expected to go ahead of him probably. That's another big part of the whole thing. It wasn't just dropping to the 3rd round. If he was dropped to the 3rd round, but he was still the 5th wide receiver taken in this draft, that'd be one thing. But he was like the 11th taken in this draft. That's a big drop for Josh Downs.
Yeah, I think for Downs, and it's actually kind of funny because I was high on him before the draft. And then after the draft, like when you look at our compiled rankings, Superflex rankings, for example, we have him at, I believe, wide receiver 5 still. And I'm actually the low guy now on him of all 4 rankers. Craig has him all the way up at 10, and I have him at 21 now. So I want him at the back end of the 2nd round now. Still though, I think like there's this sort of big field somewhere in the 2nd round of rookie drafts where all these wide receivers begin to go, right? And I think if like you just take whoever you like, and I think Downs could really help Richardson early on in his career. But there's also the whole thing, like Downs is very, very small, and if he goes over the middle, like he's kind of the Bryce Young at quarterback for wide receivers, right? He could just take one big shot and then just be out for a while. So I've sort of cooled on Downs because of the draft capital, but generally I actually like the player. I just don't know what he's gonna be like in this offense, because when we've seen the Steichen offense in Philly, it's been all centered about like around the 2 big guys, quote unquote. Like, not that Devontae Smith is a big guy, but he's just a phenomenally talented wide receiver, right? And AJ Brown is this big guy, and so I think Alec Pierce and Pittman probably benefits more from this offensive style than Downs does. So I'm sort of cooling on Downs too.
I understand 100%. So just quickly, you've got on here who are the 1st rounders in Superflex.
Yeah.
So you put on here top 10. So,
Mm.
I mean, that's explain what top 10 means, because I'm sure
It
the
was
top
just my own.
10s
It's
are.
just my own top 10. It was just because since we've updated the rankings, I've sort of actually changed like my ranking of Spears, Charbonnet, and Achane, because sort of after the draft and after I had actually updated these rankings, we heard the whole thing about Tyjae Spears not having an ACL basically. Um, and that's just sort of, I wouldn't say cooled my interest on Spears, because I still really like him as a player. It's just I'd rather maybe not take him as the first of him, Charbonnet, and Achane that I have in the same range. So it's just like for medical reasons, I sort of want him to drop just outside the first round. But my top 10 is obviously like Bijan at 1, and I've seen I saw someone take Bryce Young at 101 in a Superflex the other day, which I obviously questioned myself. But if that's where you're going, I can't really fault people for it. He's probably the safer pick than Anthony Richardson, a quarterback. I
Okay.
would still have just taken Bijan and
Just
traded.
so you
Sorry.
know, we can't explain all 10 of these. So,
No, I get it. I get it. I get it. Do you want to get to the question first, or
no,
should I
you
just?
can, no, just rattle off your top
All right,
10. Just
cool.
don't
My top
explain
10's
everyone.
no. Top 10's Bijan, Richardson, Bryce Young, Stroud, Jameer Gibbs, Jake at 6, Addison at 7, Quentin Johnston at 8. I know you hate that, but it is what it
Blech.
is. Yeah. Kendre at 9, and I could definitely flip Kendre for Johnston. I just think it's easier for Johnston to get on the field, which is why I have him higher than Kendre. Then I have Levis at 10, Charbonnet at 11, Achane at 12 right now.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not in love with the Quentin Johnston in there.
No, obviously.
I'm willing. I don't have my top 10 or whatever like written
No.
down here, but I will say that guys like Miller, Spears, Charbonnet, and I'm missing one, Mingo. You could
Achane,
talk both tight
Roschon.
ends,
Yeah.
or really 3 tight ends if you want. I think after you get past the first 6, there is about 12 players that if they went in the back part of the first round, I wouldn't complain or argue with. I just think that group is really big. There's lots of question marks for a lot of them. I'm going to prefer to take more shots on the running backs in that group than most of the wide receivers. Mingo, Rashee Rice are a couple that I'm going to take shots on. We'll talk about a little bit later, but that would be my like first round. It's going to be, I think there's going to be a lot of variance in, the 9 through 12 picks with
For
Addison and probably Quentin Johnston, even though I don't like it, being there a lot in the 7 to 9 range. Kincaid's going to be in a bunch. There's still going to be people that like Mayer. So the tight ends will probably work their way in there a little bit, but okay. Favorite reaches. Talk about second round guys that you really want to target, that'll likely fall in the second round a lot. Your first one is Roschon Johnson, running back, Chicago Bears. I love the pick. We were both, we both liked him pre-draft. A lot of people probably don't love the landing spot right now, but I'm telling you, Roschon Johnson might be the Bears dude right off the bat. Maybe it might take a few weeks into the season, but this dude, we would be talking about him in a different light if it wasn't for being behind Bijan. So why don't you explain that to us a little bit?
I think first of all, like the whole calling it a reach in the second round, like you basically just said it. Like the field is going to be so big after the first 6 that you can't really even call picking someone a reach at this point, because the tier is so big that I don't even think like reach sort of it qualifies as a reach, right? But Roschon is just like, when you look at him, he's just like he's a bulldog. Like he reminds me of Ramondre Stevenson basically. Like he could just be your Ramondre 2.0, where he just comes in and the guys ahead of him is like they're fine. They're mostly volume plays. They're not maybe as talented as Roschon is, and then he just at some point wins the job. Maybe because of injury, maybe just because he's a better guy and shows that. and I think we talked about it last week too. Like I said, like up to I think 5 running backs from this class could end up being starters in the NFL next year, just because they come in and they just show, okay, this draft was very, very deep at running back, so maybe they fell a bit, but they're just good running backs. And there's sort of a changing of the guards at running back too in the NFL. Roschon, he just does everything so well. Like he's a good pass blocker, which is great because I don't think Herbert or Foreman are, at least not as good. He has pretty good hands, which we see a bit at Texas, and he's just a bulldozer, and I love that. I just love these bulldozing backs, and it's like you said earlier, like you just want the bigger guys, really. So I just love him, and I could take him anywhere from the first pick in the second round to wherever. Like I just want Roschon, and I don't mind sort of quote unquote reaching on him just to get him on my teams.
Yeah, I agree with you. The thing is, he's going to be active on Sundays because he is willing to do whatever.
Yeah.
And he's an exceptional special teams player. He is going to be active, and that's a good thing for a young running back, especially a 4th rounder. But again, 4th round capital for a running back ain't, that's not bad. And he comes to a team that doesn't really have that super stud running back. He can, earn touches over Deonta Foreman, and Khalil Herbert. And you're right, Herbert, you have to be careful when it comes to pass blocking, pass protection. But Roschon can do everything, and at a pretty high level. And I think that we would have been talking about him different. I think he would have been a 2nd round pick if he wasn't in a backfield with Bijan Robinson.
Yeah, 2nd round pick in the NFL draft.
Right? In the NFL draft, yes.
Yeah, I agree with that. And he's just, man, you just like when you put on the tape, like it's not like Bijan, but you just see this guy mauling people.
He's a dog.
Yeah, he is.
He's a dog. The next 2 guys we can kind of speed through because we've already talked about them a little bit.
Yeah.
But they are favorites of ours to try to get in that 2nd round. First up, mine is Jonathan Mingo. We don't have to dig into that. We already know how I feel about him and why. We already talked about that. Next is Josh Downs, who we've also talked about at length already in this show. Do you have any last points that you want to make on Mingo and Downs there before we talk about the last one on the reaches section?
No, I mean, I think we touched on it. Like Mingo is in a like situation where we don't know how the targets shake out. He could just be the wide receiver 1 there, which is something I definitely want to take shots at. And for Downs, it's also because he fell so far for me. Because like I said, I really liked him pre-draft, and now he's dropped so much in value that I think he's like a screaming value at the end of the 2nd round. And that's sort of why I kind of love to sort of quote unquote reach for him in the back half of the 2nd round.
Yep. I understand that 100%. Last on this list is one that I picked, and it's Rashee Rice, who I wasn't super high on. But you see a guy get drafted to the Chiefs, and he's not going in the 1st round. Let's just preface that, right? We're in this big group of players that are, really close. So I don't mind taking shots on him here. This isn't reaching like CEH at number 1 or Sky Moore in the, 9 to 12 range that he went in drafts last year. This is a guy that you're probably going to be able to get with a mid-second.
Yeah.
And he worked out with Mahomes. Mahomes talked about how he liked the way this guy did stuff. You don't know. One of these guys, it could Sky Moore. You're hearing good stuff about the kid that Justin Ross this offseason. You've got the other guys you talked about. Who knows who it is? But if anybody remembers Austin Collie for the Indianapolis Colts,
oh yes,
one thing that can change whether you're the most skilled
Gonzalez
or not,
or whatever his name was,
is if your quarterback likes you.
Yeah.
And if Patrick Mahomes likes Rashee Rice and we can get him in the 2nd round of rookie drafts, That's huge, right? We're not overdraft. We're not wasting a bunch of draft capital, first round draft capital for Rice right now. Now, does that mean he can't move up into that range and then kind of ruin this whole thing? Definitely could happen, especially if rookie camp, we start hearing good stuff about him, and then we start hearing more about him working out with Mahomes. His value will rise. But if your rookie drafts are right now and you can get him in the second round, I love that value because I want guys tied to Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
And he has a shot to be the wide receiver just because it's all question marks at that position. And at least you're taking a shot on a guy when everybody else around him in the draft, rookie drafts, have the question marks as well. So I like him as a reach. What do you think about Rashee Rice?
I kind of like it, and it's not just that that your quarterback likes you. It's that your future Hall of Fame quarterback likes you, right?
Yeah.
It's like with the Peyton Manning to Austin Collie and now Mahomes possibly to Rashee Rice. It's not just any quarterback. It's one of the best quarterbacks, if not the best quarterback right now, in Mahomes. So that's definitely a great point. And then, as you said, like it could be anyone in that wide receiver room for the Chiefs. And I think it's also because he's priced where he is right now. And I think it's because we have been burnt by Clyde Edwards-Helaire. We have basically been burnt by Sky Moore, who sort of vaulted up to somewhere in the late first last year, right? So it's like people are sort of wary now when the Chiefs pick someone. They're like, I don't want to pick this guy too late because I've done it multiple times now. We've seen it two or 3 years in a row where people are getting overexcited by this Chiefs landing spot. So people have sort of dialed it back now. And that means he's sort of not maybe a discount, but he's a value. He could be a value. So I like Rashee Rice as well. I just want all the quarterback or running backs first, and then I'm going to think about taking Rashee Rice.
I understand 100%. So we have another question here from Bryce. Seems like in the fantasy community we are a lot of people differ. A lot of people differ. Gibbs over JSN at the 5 spot, and a lot of these rookie drafts. Which player do you guys prefer? So is it Gibbs or JSN for you, Thomas?
It's JSN, and he was there pre-draft, and it's just because of the longevity of the wide receiver position. Like Gibbs is going to be good. I have no doubt he's going to be very, very good. I just want the wide receiver because of the longevity, and JSN is just so super talented. And Tyler Lockett they have an out in Tyler Lockett's contract after this season, so he could just be out of there. And then it's DK Metcalf and JSN. So I'm gonna still take JSN over Gibbs.
I'm like 50-50. Like I would say that if I had 10 drafts where I was in that spot with those two coming up, I'd probably take them about 50-50, maybe 60-40, but it could lean either way for me, depending on roster construction. I do think they're really close. I think you have to appreciate a running back that goes in the top 12. We haven't had very many running backs that have went top 12 over the past 10 years. And out of those, we haven't had very many that didn't make professional impacts, right?
Yeah.
Like late first rounders, we've seen bust. We haven't seen very many top half of the first round running backs bust in the NFL. Even guys that look like busts at the beginning, like Leonard Fournette, moved on and got opportunities elsewhere and had some good fantasy seasons. So, I still, the whole wide receiver over running back thing, I'm always running our wide receiver first, but I do think that people get stuck into the looking too far out into the future.
I can
too often when it comes to that, right? Like Gibbs could be a difference maker at running back, catching the ball and running for Detroit. JSN could be a guy that gets 165, 75 targets. They're both very talented guys. I like both of them. JSN was the guy I wanted to end up in Chicago with his boy Justin. I still love what they did, but I really wanted to root for this player. But I do think about 50-50 on those.
I could
Take
totally
shots,
agree with
get some
that.
shares of both. Sleepers.
Yes.
This is third round back. Guys that we're taking shots on. First up, Michael Wilson, wide receiver, Arizona Cardinals. Why do you like him, Thomas? Why?
Do you remember this former Arizona Cardinal called Michael Floyd? It was pretty good for fantasy, right?
Yeah, he's a former Fighting Irish.
Yeah. Michael Wilson reminds me a lot of him. He's just this big dude who's gonna win downfield. And I just think, like, yes, Hopkins. There are rumors that Hopkins is gonna stay there, but I don't really think Michael Wilson was drafted for this season anyway. He could even be someone like Caleb Williams next season is gonna throw passes to. What do we know, man? Anyway,
Arizona is also one of those question marks at the bottom of my power
exactly,
rating.
exactly. They're like in that back, like 3 worst teams for sure. He's just a big dude, and I love big guys at wide receiver. It's like with your love for Jonathan Mingo. For me, it's just Michael Wilson. And like I think I got him at the back end of the third, and I just want to take him there every single day because he's like big wide receivers just have so much more going for them than all these small wide receivers. Like big wide receivers can win in so many different ways just because of their size and speed. And Wilson has both in spades, so I love him.
Okay, first I want to hit on this size point at wide receiver because I think both of us have this issue, and it's something that we really need to pay attention to. But the NFL is changing,
For sure.
and not only are wide receivers getting smaller, but guys at other positions are getting smaller and faster as well. So, we're going to have to keep an eye on if this is relative or not, and if the size, because of everybody else getting smaller and faster, is just a relative thing, right? Just the entire league getting smaller and faster. So I do think that's one thing that we do need to pay attention to because you and I both say a lot of the same stuff when it comes to the size of these players. So that could kind of bite us in the ass if we don't just keep an eye on this. I do want to make that point, but I do agree with you. They do need a receiver there. The AJ Green experiment had some flashes, but didn't really work. What is Rondell Moore? What is Greg Dortch? And then how long is Hopkins going to be there? Lots of questions. I do like that they addressed their offensive line to get Kyler some help there. So I still haven't done a lot of work on Michael Wilson. We talked about this right before the draft. I wasn't the most familiar with him, so I can't really speak to that. But there are targets to be had in an offense that we are going to learn about fairly quickly when this season starts. But they're also going to be without Murray. So what are we going to see there? It may take a little while, like you said, but
For sure.
We'll see that. Next one up, I had Sean Tucker. We already talked about him quite a bit at the beginning. I just think the talent, again, was there to be a third rounder in the NFL. It's just that health concern. So I'm willing to take shots on him with a lot of the other guys that I don't think are that talented. We just got to see if Tucker's health's going to be there and he can make an impact on a Buccaneers team. Do you have anything else that you want to add to him? Because we already talked about him as well.
No, I think it's a fine landing spot for him, and he has a skill set that reminds me a lot of Rachaad White, honestly. So he might just turn out to be a better version of Rachaad White. We just don't know.
I agree. Next up is another guy that both of us have talked about at length, and this was kind of what we wanted to happen, right? We kind of we didn't want him to get the premium stuff and get the rise because he's a 5-star recruit, a guy that has all the talent, and he goes to a situation in New England where you either buy in or you're gone.
Exactly.
Could be an eye opener for Kayshon Boutte, wide receiver You like taking shots on him later in drafts. You already know I did because I was talking about it, hoping this would happen so that we could get some cheap shots on a guy with a lot of upside that just needs to figure it out above the shoulders. What are your thoughts there on Kayshon Boutte?
I mean, we've seen him be extremely productive at the college level, and he's just a playmaker. Like, you just get the ball in his hands, and he's just gonna get you yards, make plays for you. And obviously, he's not gonna be like a Jamar Chase, but like in the third round, like if he hits his upside, which is like the 5-star recruit that he was, he's gonna way outperform that value anyway. And then even if you don't like truly love the New England landing spot, you're just gonna be able to flip him for a lot more than what you drafted him for. So it's like it's one of these, like, in the third round, especially in this draft, like, it's super inexpensive. So you like just take the guy. If he doesn't amount to anything, if he doesn't even make it through roster cuts at New England, like, you just take the L and you just move on because you didn't really lose anything. But if he hits the upside, like, you're golden, and he could just be someone who's great for you.
Our resident Patriots fan says, "Good luck trying to beat out Tyquan Thornton and Kendrick Bourne." Yeah, I mean, and that's another thing with that landing spot. Even if you don't love the New England landing spot, like the competition for him there, like, he could come out as the alpha in that wide receiver room because what else is there? Now, does that translate into a bunch of fantasy points being on New England? Who knows? You never know. Last year we thought it was for sure Mac Jones is their guy, and then midway through the season we're going, oh, is it Bailey Zappi? So who knows? It is a question mark, but like you said, like, you're gonna miss on most third rounders anyway.
Yeah,
like, you're not gonna be finding diamonds in the rough in the third and later at a consistently good pace. Like, it's just not the way these work.
It's gonna be like 1 in 50.
Yeah, it's very, very poor, which is why I like to take shots on quarterbacks that have some upside in super flex drafts. And Jaren Hall is one. Vikings have been looking for that heir, the guy to take over for Cousins when he is done there. And Jaren Hall was their pick this year. It's not necessarily a player that, like, excites me a ton, but when we look at the other guys in this range that he's going to go in rookie drafts, I'm willing to take some shots. And if it works out, great. I did the same thing with Kellen Mond, and it didn't hurt me that it didn't work out, right? Like, it didn't ruin my roster, but if it would have worked out, then great. And I get a quarterback cheaper than you're ever going to, like Brock Purdy, right? Stashed him on some taxis last year just because I didn't know if Lance could stay healthy, and it worked out. Yeah. But again, we're gonna miss on this guy more than we're gonna find him at this part of the rookie drafts. But I'll take some shots on I love taking just shots on random quarterbacks late, but he's one of the ones that I really like in this draft. I like the situation he's in because I don't think he's going to have to wait Jordan Love time to get on the field in an opportunity, or we're just going to know, like Kellen Mond, that he's not the guy and he's not going to get the opportunity, soon enough. So that's my quarterback here. What do you think about Jaren Hall, Vikings?
I mean, as you said, I really like the landing spot because there might be opportunity in the not so distant future, and that's kind of what you really want from these guys that you take, especially at the quarterback position. Like, you can smash them into your taxi squad, and then basically a year from now, you're probably gonna know, like, is this guy worth keeping on my taxi squad for another year, or do I just get rid of him and put someone else on my taxi squad? So he's gonna be like part of that taxi squad carousel for a lot of guys. And honestly, it's whatever quarterback you like, you just take them there and then stash them and see in a year, like, do I keep this guy around or do I just throw him out the window? So I like, on the player himself, I'm not in love with him, but I believe he has the legs to sort of be, maybe not a Konamiko, but he could get you some yards with his legs too. And then if he develops as a passer, he could definitely be something.
Next up on the list is Zach Evans, running back, Los Angeles Rams. Tell me why you like Zach Evans, 6th round draft pick 38 in round 6, which means that he was probably a compensatory pick there in the 6th round. Just 3 picks behind Deuce Vaughn to the Cowboys. What is it about Zach Evans that has you wanting to take shots?
It's the landing spot. Like we've already seen the Rams sour on Cam Akers. So who knows if he's gonna stay as the lead back? Like he's obviously gonna go in as a starter, but like he might just find himself in the doghouse for some reason or another again. And then there's like Kyron Williams is the other guy on the team, and we already know like Williams' metrics were terrible. And Zach Evans comes in as this former 5-star running back recruit who is just only behind Bigsby in his recruiting class. And obviously, Evans has sort of had a rough go at it because he was chased out of TCU by the guy that we both love. But again, it's these super inexpensive picks, and you just want to hit, like, if you just hit one guy, and I think Evans could be that because of the situation that he finds himself in. Akers might not be there for a long time, and Williams is not something I see as more than a 3rd down guy for them. So it's just worth taking the upside for me.
Would you rather take shots on Sean Tucker or Zach Evans?
I think Zach Evans purely because like he's probably going to get opportunities. We don't know if Tucker is ever going to be able to actually get opportunities. So because of the medical, I'm just going to go with Zach Evans. But for me, like if you like either guy, just go get your guy.
I've never been big on Evans. I don't think he, filled out the whole pedigree thing that we had thought. Like you said, got chased out by a much less touted Kendre Miller there in TCU and moved and then falls to the late 6th round of the NFL draft. Doesn't mean that he can't. I do like Cam Akers' talent. Cam Akers, when he got out of the doghouse last year, kind of reminded me of now I'm drawing a blank. Brandon Ayuk there in San Francisco had that early blip and then has played great football since he got out of the doghouse. So I would rather take Sean Tucker just because I think the skill's better, and it's just the it sounds so weird. It's just the heart issue. It's a big issue, but it's not diminishing his skill. If they deem him healthy enough to play, then that's good for Sean Tucker. I'm not super excited about Evans. I probably will have some just because you're right. It's late. If you get him late enough, there is a value for a player like that in those rounds. Next up, because we only got a couple minutes, Tyler Scott, wide receiver, Bears. A guy that was moving up boards before the NFL draft goes to a wide receiver core that at first looks crowded, but who knows if Claypool or Mooney are going to be there next year. This is a guy that has top end speed, can do a lot of things, admits that he needs work in route running because he was converted from a running back to a wide receiver relatively not too long ago. So the talent is there. The after the catch is really exciting with Tyler Scott. If he can learn the route running and clean up some of the drops, I think he had an 11% drop rate. But again, newish to the position, has a lot of upside. And who knows where he stands on this depth chart a year from now. With maybe he's good enough that he runs Mooney out of town. Maybe Mooney and Claypool just choose free agency and don't come back, and Scott's in a position to be the wide receiver too. There's a lot of options there with Tyler Scott. I like him. I liked him before he was rising, but I want to take shots in the 3rd+ rounds on Tyler Scott. What about you?
Yeah, I can agree with that. And he's a speed guy, right? It's like he can make it happen in multiple ways. He could, and especially because he's a former running back. Like you can just dunk him the screen, and then he might just house it. Like if he gets good blocks, so he's going to be one of those efficiency guys where you're probably never going to see him get 6 or 7 touches or targets, a game, but unless he becomes that Tariq Cohen sort of weapon for them. Um, but even so, like he might be fine just having those 4 to 5 targets per game and just catching a big one for you, and like taking shots at him, even in normals or in standard drafts, is fine. In best ball, it's even better for me. He's like one of those guys you just want, like in every single best ball rookie draft, you just want to take this guy because he might just be that one play guy that like 160 yarder and boom, 12 points.
I do not disagree with that at all. Okay, we've got 2 more guys you have on this list. We're going to go through these guys quick. Stetson Bennett, quarterback, Los Angeles Rams. You laughed at yourself there. You're like, oh shit, I put.
No, it was just because I looked at the guy who was at the very end, and my love for that dude. With Stetson Bennett, it's like with Jaren Hall, like the same for me that Jaren Hall is for you basically. And Stetson Bennett just shown that he's a winner. So landing with the Rams, who like we don't know how long Stafford's going to be there, and Stetson Bennett's a winner. He's proven that he's come from being a walk-on at Georgia to a 2-time national champion, and it's just like that type of dog personality. I just kind of want that later on because there is a chance that he just becomes a starter at some point, or even just a serviceable backup. Really.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that Stetson's going to be the guy that I take the shots on at quarterback. There are a couple other guys that I prefer, but I can get, I get it. There is a big part of being a professional and winning and that getting you an opportunity. But we've also seen lots of quarterbacks that won in college that did not pan out in the NFL. But good story, good coach. How long is he going to be there? That dude, there's rumors every offseason. Yeah. He could retire and go to the booth and get a huge contract to be an announcer, right? So who knows how long he's going to be there. Stafford, Kupp's getting up there in age. It would be fun to see Stetson Bennett trying to throw to Cooper Kupp, though. But next up on your list is Evan Hull, running back, Indianapolis Colts. I know you love him. Yeah. I get that he ran every run at the combine to the end zone, but the guy goes to a backfield with my running back 1 in Dynasty, Jonathan Taylor.
I agree with that, by the way. I agree. Just want to say that.
I do want to say that and get that out of the way. Bijan's not there yet. I need to see it in the pros. Exactly. Jonathan Taylor, monster. But Evan Hull, running back, you want to take shots on him. I'll probably be taking shots on him too. But you do like him way more than me.
For me, it's more of an honorable mention just because it's a rookie show and I just have to get Evan Hull in there. It's
just gotta get Evan Hull in there. I like it. I like it.
Just gotta probe up my guy. That's where we're at with this guy. It is a bit concerning for me that Richardson is going to be their quarterback because Hull was going to live off of pass catching, and Richardson is likely to at least keep some of those check downs that Hull could have gotten. But I just think Steichen just wants weapons in this offense, and I think that's why they drafted Evan Hull. So I think he's going to get an opportunity. So I just want to take him at some point, like in the third or later, really. And that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, it's gonna be, for him. It's gonna depend on where other players fall that are in his range at that time. Who else is on the board? But I'll take some shots there. That's it. That's everybody that we've got on our list for this week. Next week is going to be a startup Superflex Dynasty mock draft. We're gonna dig in. We're gonna see.
It's gonna be sweet.
What I say we do is I say we do the draft early, and then cover it so that we don't have to wait and we can get real people in there and make picks. But we're gonna talk about a startup Superflex Dynasty mock draft. We're gonna dig in, see where these rookies are falling. see what we like, what we don't like, and
Yeah.
go over that with the whole grand scheme of things. If you have any questions, make sure you get in here, drop them in the chat. Hit us up on Discord, rotoheat.com/Discord. Hit us up on Facebook in our Dynasty Facebook group, or tune in Monday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern for the IDP Heat Seekers. Thursday, noon for the Fantasy Buffet with Thomas and I. And then Thursday at 5:30. Tonight's going to be at 6. They had to delay a little bit because of an appointment. But the Dynasty Heat Seekers, Thursdays at 5:30 normally. Tonight, 6 p.m. Tune in. Make sure you like, subscribe. Thomas, any last words?
Peace out, everyone. See you next week.
See you next week.